The Fairytale of Morley Dog, written by Mike Dudek, performed by Fiona Sharma.
Chapter 1, Lost Puppy by Ida B. Long, resident of Johnstown. I'm missing my puppy. It's not actually my puppy, but I've always considered it partially mine. Actually, the puppy's older than I am in people years. Whenever I was growing up, I used to get downtown just to see the pup. My parents told me that he was given to all of the people in Johnstown as a survivor of the 1889 Johnstown Flood. Last week I saw an article in the paper that said the Morley dog, my puppy, would finally be returned. I look forward to this. I do question a few things in the article. It said that the mold was made in England. It said that it was cast in New York. My understanding was that the mold actually came from Germany. The mold was imported to the United States and ended up in York, Pennsylvania. I like to think that every barbell ever made in York, Pennsylvania was a relative to our Morley dog. My grandpappy told me that the dog was actually cast around 1830. If the dog year is equal to 7 human years, 177 human years would make that dog 1,239 years old. That is older than Grandpappy. The Morley dog has been missing for over 4 years, human years. It has been missing 28 dog years. Grandpappy always told me legends about the Morley dog. I know the dog was actually a lot more than just a lawn ornament. At least I feel so in my heart. About 2 or 3 years ago, the famous talk show diva Oprah bought a dog made from the same mold. I think she paid $300,000 for that dog. It makes you think. Maybe there is something to the stories. You know, the stories I'm talking about. The stories that say the dog magically comes to life when the city is in dire straits. In 1889, the metal dog might have been hit by lightning, or maybe there was magic in the air. People say it came to life and was running around downtown, pulling young children out of the raging water. Some people say they saw it at the top of Main Street. Others say it was down by the point. Eventually it was found in the mud and returned to the Morley family where the dog resided, as a lawn ornament, until the 1936 flood. Some people say at the height of the storm it came down over the path by the inclined plane from where the family resided along Luzerne Street. Others swear they saw the dog rescue an infant at the base of Mill Creek Road. They suppose the dog came down from Westmont, through Grandview Cemetery, and finally into downtown along Mill Creek. The last flood was 30 years ago this year. It was 1977, and Johnstown was flooding. Some patrons of a local bar remember seeing the lightning strike a tree in the little park where the dog stood for many years, subjected to ridicule and pigeon droppings. I don't know if it was the third pitcher of beer or the lightning, but those patrons swear they thought maybe, possibly, the dog came to life again and ran to Hornerstown and started pulling youngsters out of the water as the flood was sweeping away homes. I personally did not see the dog come to life, but I did seem to think that when the flood waters receded, the dog looked tired. It is hard to tell fact from fantasy, so I interviewed one person who saw the dog come to life once. Bill Felix of the Johnstown candy store swears on a box of Kit Kats that the Hanson brothers were having a few drinks one night. After the 12th pitcher of beer, an accident happened. They spilled some lemonade into the beer and decided to use the mixture to wash off the dog in the park. When the concoction was poured over the dog, it sprang to life and raced up Main Street barking. The Hanson brothers chased it to the top of Main Street, where the original Sarah Barton residence and hospital was in 1889 era. It later became a mortuary. The dog leapt into the air above their heads and raced back to Central Park, where it once again became a metal statue. I think some of this is really stretching the truth, at least a little. In order to find the pure, unadulterated truth, I am hiring a pet psychic and part-time historian, T. Ruth DeStretchen, DPH, Doctor of Puppies and Hounds, to follow up on this story. Her findings will be revealed next week. Your not-so-roving reporter, my corns are killing me, Ida B. Long, resident of Johnstown.
Chapter 2, An Investigation into the Morley Dog Legends, by T. Ruth Destrechen, DPH.
I was employed by Ida B. Long, resident of Johnstown, to investigate the legends of Morley Dog. I would like to start by stating my credentials. I hold the degree of DPH. It stands for Doctor of Puppies and Hounds. I earned the degree at Transylvania University in the town of Mostar, Romania, where I hold a teaching position as Professor Emeritus. I came to Johnstown to dispel the rumors of a metal dog coming to life. I brought with me a special device called a transmongrel-ficator. The trans means changing, mongrel refers to the dog, and finally, ficator refers to the scientific fact documentation of the dog coming to life. The gizmo looks like a laptop computer. You go to the scenes of the supposed transformations, and the device will display images on the screen. If you are stuck with nothing to do in the evening, you can also play solitaire on it. I went all over the city of Johnstown with my little gizmo and got no readings of any extraordinary events. The screen remained blank. I went into Johnny's restaurant and decided to play a game of solitaire while waiting for my meal. I then realized I forgot to put the batteries into the machine. I pulled the batteries out of my purse and put them in the gizmo, and it lit up. I was so excited. I paid for the meal and left, having only gotten one refill on my coffee. I went down to the little park at City Hall, where the dog last stood. I could see it again on the screen. As I moved around the park, I could see its footprints. The device locks the signature of the event into its chip, much like DNA codes, a unique human being. This lets me track prior events of that specific dog. I went down to Main Street, to where the Morley family once had their home. On the monitor, I could see the dog standing in the front yard. I was seeing an image from before the 1889 flood. As I walked over Johnstown, I saw images from the floods when the dog came to life. I could see the footprints even though they were now under the paving. The energy still existed. Only one image had me befuddled. It occurred as I was at the top of Main Street, where I would swear that I saw an image of 3 brothers chasing the dog with hockey sticks. Realizing that the legends may be true, I decided to follow the trail to the beginning. I need to find out the history of making of the dog to understand the magic. I went to York, Pennsylvania. After inquiring, I found a metal fabricator that was working a casting of pot metals back in the 1830s. The manager was fascinated by my findings, and he let me scan the area with my transmongrel-ficator. I found evidence that this was the very place where the dog was originally cast. The owner of the plant invited me to stay an extra day while they located the records of mold orders back in the 1830s. After a night that I will remember fondly for the rest of my life, he was very handsome, and we danced until early the next morning. The logbook described the dog mold and an order being placed for a lawn ornament to be shipped to the Morley family in Johnstown. At that time, they used pot metal to make the finished cast. Pot metal is basically any metal or combinations of metals that would melt in the pot. The hot metal was poured into the casting, and you ended up with a positive casting of a dog. The interesting thing is that there was a notation that the foundry was short on metal at that time, and they were buying metals for remelting. Essentially, there was recycling even back in 1830s. The notation that caught my eye was an entry that a Native American Indian of the Shawnee tribe has brought in a meteor and was paid 4 sacks of beans for the metal content. I was on a new quest. I had to find the story of the meteor that the Indian named Little Dog had found. It took 4 hours on the internet, but I found that little dog, and his family left the York area and moved to the desert in Nevada. I knew something drastic had happened for a woods Indian to leave his tribe and move his family across the continent to a desert area. One might say he really gambled with his future. Once in Nevada, he added Sky to his family name in honor of the incident that happened in York. The following is a summation of a phone call to the descendants of Little Dog Sky. It seems that Little Dog was fishing one night. Being bored, he was watching the stars. He was looking at the constellations. He studied the Crab and the Big and the Little Dipper. It was then he noticed something happen in the area of the Dog Star. It looked like the star split, and a piece of it was headed straight for him. He lay on the ground frozen with fear as the light grew a tail and a terrible rumble grew as the object became closer. The meteorite struck the trout stream and a large hole just above where Little Dog was fishing. The hot meteorite caused a cloud of steam as it boiled the water. Little Dog saw the fish instantly cooked in the hot water. He pulled out several large trout floating on top of the water and later ate them. Fascinated by the hot water, he took off his clothes and had the first hot bath of his life. When he investigated the meteorite, it was only the size of a man's head, but it was very heavy. He could not carry it out of the stream because of its weight. He lashed several saplings together and worked them under the submerged meteorite. He then lashed it to the skid system and used his horse to pull it out of the river. He took it to the local foundry and sold it. He knew it was of value because of its weight. Little Dog had his luck change for the good after that. He moved his family out to what became Las Vegas, Nevada, and became a rancher. His heirs later sold a small piece of land to build casinos. Truly, the meteorite was good luck for him. As an investigator, I suspect the metal from the meteor gave the Morley dogs unique magical characteristics, but perhaps it was something else. I felt it was necessary to check every option. I booked an international flight for Germany. I wanted to find the place where the mold was made. The story will continue from Germany next week. Signing off for now, T. Ruth de Stressen. Chapter 3. The German Heritage of the Morley Dog by T. Ruth de Stressen, D.Ph. Arriving in Germany was very pleasant. The flight over was nice and I did not see the movie before. I used a local investigative agency to look up foundries and mold-making facilities of the early 1800s. I was looking for one that would deal with the English, as the mold may have been shipped through England, per the Tribune article. The first foundry I investigated let me tour the grounds with my gizmo, looking for any energy field associated with the dog. My machine stayed blank. I did check the batteries, but I got no images. The second foundry was in the Black Forest area of Germany. This was the special Black Forest of Fairytale fame. I was headed to the same Black Forest of Hansel and Gretel, Jack the Giant Killer, and mythical monsters. The foundry I found was ancient. It must have been over 2,000 years old. It was empty. No one was around. I pulled out my device and turned it on. The transmogralification system glowed with energy signatures. I had reached the area where the original mold was made. I left and went to the nearest town and started asking questions about the old foundry. It was legendary in the area. Supposedly, 2 brothers did the molds in the 1800s by depicting animals that did not exist in the normal world. Their last name was Grimm. I asked about any molds that were made resembling a large dog. I pulled out a postcard and showed them a picture of the Morley dog. An old man came forward and looked at the picture. He studied it for a good 5 minutes, then looked me in the eye. "You called him Morley?" he asked. "Oh no, it was a lawn ornament owned by the Morley family." "That is Grolf, the dog owned by the royal family. His spirit still guards the old castle." With that said, the old man sat down. "Could someone please tell me the story? I need to know," I implored. The old man just stared into space and remained silent. Finally, the waitress came over. The old castle is over the next hill. You can walk there in half an hour. Just don't go after dark. The place is falling apart now, so be careful. On the far side is a little cottage. Go there and ask the lady, and she will help you." It was more like an hour until I reached the castle. Most of it had fallen in as the roof timbers had rotted a long time ago. There was an old section that may have been a storage building. I was looking in it and found something that chilled me to the bone. It was the remainder of an oak crate. The wood was branded, scorched letters stood out. It translated TBG, the Grimm Brothers molds and statues, ornaments for the home, office, and castle. I left the castle and went to the cottage. There I found the most interesting lady. Her name is Fantasy. The story she told me about the princess and her dog, Groff, explained a lot of the Morley legends. I'll relate her story in the next edition. T. Ruth de Stretchen, D.P.H. Chapter 4. Morley's Dog and the Spirit of Groff by Fantasy. The story started a long time ago in Europe. It was the time of witches, warlocks, and wizards. Dragons still roamed the hillsides. The young master of the castle had a pet dog. The dog's name was Groff. Shortly after his 21st birthday, the young prince awoke to the cry of the village people. A dragon had burned down the stable. His uncle, a wizard, was visiting and wanted to help. The prince was stubborn and wanted to slay the dragon. At that time, dragons breathed fire. It was a type of wizard's fire that would burn through anything or anyone. The wizard cast a spell to protect the young man and his dog, as they both left to hunt the dragon. They found and slew the dragon. The spell protecting them remained. It would save them both a decade later. You know the story of Sleeping Beauty. She was enchanted by a poison that made her sleep until the prince kissed her. That prince was the man who lived in the castle up the hill. When the princess awoke, she married the prince, and they tried to live happily ever after. The prince brought her back to the castle. They were married in the orchard at the end of this very lane. My great-time foregrandmother was the midwife for the birth of all their children. The repayment was that she and all of her descendants, including me, could live on the grounds. The children were small. I think the eldest was only about 10 years old when it happened. The witch who made the original poison wanted to exact revenge upon Sleeping Beauty and her family. It was a dark storm that night when they came. Groff was sleeping in the children's room to protect them when the witch broke through the window. The witch saw the sleeping children and raised her wand, muttering an incantation. Groff stood between her and the children. The witch released the wizard's fire from the wand just as the dog bit through her wand. The witch's hand and arm both disappeared in a flash of energy from the fire. Her body degenerated to dust that fell upon the floor as the fire, forced backward by the dog's clenched teeth over the wand, dissolved her body. The only thing left of the witch was part of the broken wand. Groff was still protected from when the wizard put a magic shield on him to protect him from the dragon's breath, but the wizard's fire took its toll. Having protected the children, he slumped to the floor. The king and queen both rushed into the room. The children told them exactly what happened. Groff was having a hard time breathing. The children all hugged him and would not let him go. The family stayed up all night with him, giving him sips of water. The town doctor was summoned to the castle and checked in on Rolf. The doctor checked Rolf from nose to tail. He pressed his ear to the hound's chest and checked the heart rate and breathing. When he finished, he asked the children to tell the story from the instant the witch broke through the window. He listened intently until the children told of how Rolf snapped the wand, just as the energy from the wand was released as wizard's fire. He then held his head between his hands and his fingertips to the temples. He stayed that way thinking for a good 2 minutes. Everyone remained silent in anticipation. The doctor broke the silence. "You said he snapped at the wand and the witch disintegrated to a powder. Did it start with her hand, then arm, then proceed to the top of her head with the legs the last turn to powder?" The children nodded. "Yes, sir, that was what happened exactly." "When he bit her hand and wand, his mouth must have actually closed as he bit the wand. The energy from the wizard's fire started to discharge through the wand just as his mouth shut. It could not break free. And then it could not burn through the shield covering the dog's mouth. It then backed up the wand and into the witch's hand and body. The shield acted as a reflector, sending the force of the fire backwards into the witch, turning her to ash from the inside out." The doctor continued, "I think he is just dehydrated. That much fire set so close to him evaporated most of the saliva. In a day or 2, he should be back to normal." And so it was. Rolf recovered and was playing catch with the children by the end of the week. Sleep well. I'll continue after I've rested. Fran T.C.